Now, as we've heard already this evening, health leaders are warning NHS waiting lists are soaring because senior doctors are refusing to take on extra work in order to protect their pensions. NHS providers say it was hearing from hospital trusts whose consultants and senior managers are declining extra shifts, which is having a knock-on impact on patient care. So let's find out more about this. Joining me from East Yorkshire is Dr. Tony Goldstone, who's a consultant radiologist himself and clinical director at Hull University Teaching Hospital. Thanks for joining us. This is a complicated issue, but the bald fact is that this is now having a serious impact on patients.
That's right. Unfortunately, one of the problems is that it is fiendishly complicated, and it's taken doctors and the health service a while to kind of catch up with the numbers. But unfortunately, now they've done that and realised that in some cases doctors are actually paying to work. That is having a knock-on effect on patient care and on waiting lists, which is obviously a grave threat to our NHS.
So just to be clear, you say doctors are paying to work. So the way the tax works on overtime, some doctors are doing shifts and actually are not making any money at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's absolutely right. It is exceedingly complicated, but essentially for this new tax that came in 2016-17 called the tapered annual allowance, rather than just being a tax on your pension, because it was meant to be a pension tax, but it also takes into consideration your non-pensioned income and also your pension growth, which is absolutely impossible to calculate during the tax year. And so now doctors find themselves in the position that in some years, if they've had a pay rise, for example, even if they go just a pound over this limit of £110,000, they can land themselves with an additional bill of an extra £13,500 by just breaching this limit, right. Which is a crazy situation because doctors completely do not mind paying their fair share of progressive tax, but when that involves potentially paying to go to work, that's on an entirely different level.
And so is this affecting enough consultants or so many consultants that patient care will really suffer? What do you fear the impact could be here?
Mark, I'm gravely concerned. I think the impact is going to be enormous. I think all full-time consultants will be affected by this taxation charge. NHS employees recently did a large survey of almost 2,500 staff within the NHS, and some 82% said that they were either already cutting down on work or planning to cut down work. And so I think what we've started to see is really the tip of the iceberg, but I think unfortunately the worst is very much to come unless the government take the urgent action that's required to reverse these changes.
Right, but I've got to ask you this. I mean, this is a tax issue. Isn't your argument with the Treasury, with HMRC, not with the NHS, and certainly not with patients?
Absolutely. It is the Treasury that need to answer this, and it's been very disappointing that in some of the recent Westminster Hall debates, for example, that they've not sent Treasury to come along and to answer that. But you're absolutely right, and doctors 100% are focused on patient care and doing their best for their patients. But you've got to appreciate, Mark, that doctors already work extremely hard. They work very long hours. On average, the average consultant does 5 or 6 unpaid free overtime a week. And on top of that, we're already working very onerous hours, overnight and at the weekend. I'm on call enough, for example. So asking them on top of that to then kind of come in on their weekends off and pay to do so is just an ask too far.
Yeah, I mean, but you do get, judging by the national average, or you get pretty well paid. Give me a sense of, it's not just a bit of extra tax you're talking about here, because if you're getting higher earnings, you should pay more tax. This is considerable amounts of money, is it? And forcing some doctors to remortgage. I mean, give us some personal experience here.
My personal liability this year was £23,000, on top of paying income tax at a higher rate. I had a 5-figure tax bill last year. The biggest bill that I've seen personally from a colleague who was in tears in my office was £86,000. This is having an enormous impact people having to remortgage their house to pay these charges. And it's those sorts of experiences that are driving the behavioural changes that unfortunately will ultimately impact on patient care.
Yeah, and isn't the real problem then that there's a shortage of doctors? Because why should doctors be asked or expected to do all this overtime to keep the National Health Service running?
Completely agree. This has been the perfect storm of an underlying workforce crisis that then made changes to the pension scheme, which, although it made them less generous, it made them more liable to tax. And then these new tax changes came in. And this perfect storm has converged to create this crazy situation. But the underlying problem is, of course, there's not enough people there. So me as a manager, as a clinical director, in my service, I've been extremely reliant on the goodwill of colleagues to come in on, Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings to help clear the backlogs. And now, unfortunately, people are just less willing to do that because, understandably, people don't want to pay to go to work.
Yeah. Okay. Tony Goldstone, thanks very much for explaining that. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.